Hey, this is a spontaneous video. I can't sleep tonight, so this is as good as any. Um, Kill some time and also because I think it's an interesting subject. I want to talk about two famous heavyweight boxers, very famous, in fact, the most famous two heavyweight boxers, Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson. Um, Now, Ali's widely regarded as the greatest, and Tyson, certainly by his fans, is regarded as the greatest. Um, Although most boxing academics would put him significantly lower than Ali, and I happen to agree with that. So just from the outset, I'm going to say that in this fantasy setup, I pick Ali, and I'm going to explain why. There's a video about this subject, and you'll find it on countless boxing forums. This Ali versus Tyson setup scenario, fantasy fight scenario. Um, Perhaps I'm slightly biased here on the grounds that not necessarily that I'm a massive Ali fan, I'm not, but rather that I think that Tyson is hugely overrated. Um, and it's very, very important to know, as I did with my last video, that saying a fighter is overrated is not the same as disrespecting him, and it's not the same as saying he's bad. You can consider a guy to be a great, great fighter, but still think that they're overrated. That's how I feel about Mike Tyson. I think he's an outstanding fighter, in fact. I think he's well above average. He is an all-time great, but among all-time greats, I think he's very overrated. Um, Certainly don't think he's in the top five ever. And if he is in the top 10, it would be very tight. There'd be a lot of other guys that could easily squeeze past him that wouldn't necessarily get a mention. So I just happen to think Mike Tyson is overrated. So in that sense, I guess I'm biased. But I'm going to justify my rationale for this. So the setup question is this: Prime Ali versus a Prime Tyson. Prime Ali would be, and I've spoken about this issue about Prime before, but I think most people would say sort of late 1960s Ali, maybe early 70s, versus late 1980s, which is the generally agreed time for Tyson's peak. Um, Tyson, okay, so that's the setup. Similar ages. When they became heavyweight champion, Ali was slightly older, but similar ages. So we're talking about two powerful young fighters in their early 20s. Um, I think it's fair to say Tyson has the edge in terms of power, and certainly the video I've just watched, most of the people are giving it to Tyson. Although to be fair, the video is from a source called Mike Tyson Fans, so you know, of course, there's going to be bias there, and from that person's subscribers, most of them give it to Tyson, but they seem to solely be focusing on Tyson's power. And this is something that I've noticed with a lot of the sort of comments that really adulate Tyson to the point of being the greatest ever. It's always a focus on his power, sometimes speed, but especially on the power factor. Like, oh, Mike Tyson was an animal; he could have taken anyone. This sort of thing. There's no question about it. Mike Tyson was a very hard hitter. I think Ring Magazine ranked him 16th hardest puncher ever, which would surprise a lot of Tyson fans. That's a lot lower than they would think. They have him number one. Well, most boxing academics would put Ernie Shavers at number one, and pound for pound, Jimmy Wilde is higher than Mike Tyson, although he's a lot less known, which being British I feel is a great tragedy. But serious boxing academics have Tyson around, I believe it's might be 14th or 16th. So it's high, but it's not as high as the supporters give him. His knockout rate in the late 80s was very impressive, but it isn't the case that Tyson went into a fight and in every single fight it was like guys were knocked out in the first 30 seconds. That happened in a few fights. I think there was a guy called Halpin. I forget some of the names of those early guys who fought Tyson, but no doubt about it, he had an impressive KO rate. Um, the best way to look at a sort of fantasy setup, yes, you can look at styles, but I also believe it's important to look at records. And someone who was pitching for Ali made a good point, and it was this. Look at the guys Ali beat. He beat a very, very feared Sonny Liston, who was basically the Mike Tyson of his day, whilst being blinded during the fight. Now, whatever you think of Muhammad Ali, that is an incredible feat. Um, that's of course the famous fight when he yelled at the reporters, jubilantly saying, "I told you, I told you." Um, had Ali done that and never done all the other things he'd done in his career, it would still be remarkable in itself. He would still be famous for that alone. So that is remarkable. Now look at the guys that Ali beat. He beat George Foreman, who, unless I'm mistaken, also ranks a lot higher than Tyson in the hardest punchers list. Foreman was a formidable force throughout his boxing career. Um, in the Rumble in the Jungle, there was serious concerns that Ali would die. He overcame that and won the fight. Joe Frazier, again, a real brawler, a real tough guy, beat him. And the list goes on and on. Granted, Ali had his losses as well. I don't believe there's any such thing as a perfect fighter. Ali had losses. Um, but if you just look at Ali's resume compared to Tyson's resume, now what did Tyson do? He beat well past his prime Larry Holmes. He beat some worthy contenders, but not guys who were in the same league as Ali's opponents. I mean, with all due respect to Michael Spinks, Pinklon Thomas, guys like that. And I do say I respect them because I think they're above average, and I respect any man with the guts to enter a ring with a feared puncher like Mike Tyson. But anyway, those guys were not in the same league as the likes of Sonny Liston, Joe Frazier, and George Foreman, and I think there would be a general consensus on that. Um, I mean, this is we'll have to look at this scenario now. Unless I'm mistaken, I'm going to have to look back on this. I think someone quoted this. Unless I'm mistaken, George Foreman beat Evander Holyfield. Um, uh, uh, don't quote me on that. I may or may not be wrong. But either way, the point is he beat Evander Holyfield. Holyfield beat Tyson. So if Ali beat Foreman, Foreman beat Holyfield, Holyfield beat Tyson, work that out. Um, I always got the impression with Mike Tyson, what he done was he relied on power and aggression and that psychological intimidation thing. He done it with a lot of guys. Um, there was one guy, I think it was the Michael Spinks fight. It may have been Trevor Berbick, I can't remember. But there was one guy you see Tyson just following him, his eyes not blinking for a second. Tyson was very effective at doing that. But it didn't work with everyone. It didn't work certainly in the 1990s with guys like Evander Holyfield, and it didn't even work with guys who are not particularly considered outstanding fighters like Francois Boffa and Kevin McBride. Granted that Tyson was past his peak at that point, but even so, that's proof that the whole intimidation thing just didn't work with everyone. It did work in the early days um, through some fighters. Um, Against some of Tyson's opponents. Look at Tyson's reign at the top. It was relatively short. I think at the very most 4 years, 1986 to 1990. Um, from when he beat Trevor Berbick to when he was defeated by Buster Douglas. Indeed, there's another thing. Buster Douglas, again, I have a lot of respect for the man, but he was never an outstanding fighter, as shown by the fact he didn't capitalize on the Tyson win. So if he could beat Mike Tyson, then put the question, could James Douglas beat Muhammad Ali? I think most people would laugh. But he beat Mike Tyson, therefore, can Tyson beat Ali? I think when you add all of this up, when people pitch for Tyson in this setup, they're purely going on strength. Now, Ali was never really regarded as a power puncher, but I've also heard the argument that his power was underestimated. Because Ali was such a swift mover for a heavyweight, because he was so elegant in his style, because he was so fast, there's an assumption he wasn't a particularly hard hitter. But I think that's misleading. Um, I mean, I can't sort of quote an example off the top of my head of an example where Ali really, really hurt a guy. In terms of punching power, he did open up a very nasty cut on Henry Cooper, but then Henry Cooper had a reputation as leading quite easily in fights. But anyway, I think when you evaluate everything, it has to go to Ali. I believe in a fight scenario, Tyson would go in there with his aggression initially, would maybe get the first few rounds on points, and Ali would be patient. He would let Tyson take those, but then around the middle rounds, I think Tyson would get frustrated. And he always done that with bigger men, and unless I'm mistaken, Ali would have been the bigger fighter. Tyson was quite a small heavyweight, in fact. Um, so I think what would have happened with Tyson would be that Tyson got frustrated. I think you would have seen something similar to, well, you can't really make any comparison with any of Tyson's opponents really to Ali in terms of style, but I think that's what you would have seen. Um, I don't necessarily think it would be a knockout. Um, as far as I know, I'm talking about a lot of this not from notes or anything like that. I'm sort of going on memory, really. It's early hours of the morning here, but basically, I think Ali would have outsmarted Tyson. Tyson was an aggressive fighter. He wasn't always a smart fighter. Sometimes he got too frustrated. He was too unprofessional in too many of his fights, in the sense he let his anger get to the better of him, and that ruined it for him because Tyson had great skill. There's no doubt about it. But in term, I think Ali was a smarter fighter. So all in all, I give it to Ali, and I'm quite confident in saying that. It wouldn't be an easy fight, but you just have to look at the respective resumes. Um, Pretty much everyone that that Tyson beat was either past the prime or average. You know, Tyson never beat a truly outstanding fighter in his prime, and I think that's a fair statement. Um, then, well, let's look at Lennox Lewis. Now, when Lewis beat Tyson, okay, you could argue Tyson was past his prime, but then basically the rational question here is the guys that beat these guys, could they beat the other person? So in other words, could Lennox Lewis beat Muhammad Ali? As much as I respect and like Lennox Lewis, I'd say probably not. Um, so you just have to look at everything with this. Let me know your thoughts, boxing fans. Ali versus Tyson. This is a very interesting setup because they're the two most famous, not just heavyweight boxers. I'd say probably the two most famous boxers. Just a quick note at the very end here. When I'm talking about fame is not necessarily the same thing as all-time greatness. I mean, Willie Pep's day isn't that well remembered except among hardcore boxing fans, and he's definitely not a household name. Yet he's often ranked among the top five, and justifiably so. Um, so he's not particularly famous. Rocky Marciano, Sugar Ray Robinson, possibly Manny Pacquiao, possibly Floyd Mayweather, Sugar Ray Leonard, most famous boxers ever, along with Tyson and Ali. So let me know two things. First of all, who wins in a fight between Ali and Tyson? Who wins in a fight between, well, I might make a few other videos about this, but let's just throw a few out. Tyson versus Marciano, that's a very interesting one. You have two small but very powerful heavyweights. So I think Tyson Marciano would be a very interesting fantasy fight. Tyson Dempsey, again, very interesting. Let me know your thoughts, but specifically on Ali versus Tyson. And who do you think's the most famous boxers ever? I think most people would agree it is Ali, number one, but who do you think's the second most famous boxer ever? Do you think it is Mike Tyson? I believe it probably is because I'm basing that on the fact that a lot of my Chinese friends, and China's not a country where boxing has traditionally been very popular, they all know Mike Tyson. Like when I say I'm into boxing, they immediately say, "Oh, I know Mike Tyson." They wouldn't say something like, "I know Shane Mosley," or "I know Floyd Mayweather," or "I know many other fighters who are great fighters." So Tyson is unquestionably one of the most famous fighters, but that is not necessarily the same as being at the absolute top peak of the great list. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Cheers.